It felt like the 49ers were going to easily beat the Seahawks, who could muster nothing offensively early on. But between that play, the Emmanuel Sanders injury, that changes everything. And it swung to the Seahawks, and then it swung back, and it swung back. And it's Chris Simms, and it's Peter King, and it's Mike Florio for a full hour talking about the Monday Night Football game. Peter, Chris and I have been talking about it for the last hour. We'll go ahead and give you first word. Your reaction to what was one of the best Monday night games that I can remember ever seeing last night.
I mean, it's one of the best Monday night games in history. It's the game of the year in the NFL. And there are very few times that a much hyped game lives up to the hype. And last night was one of them. I'm struck overarchingly by three things. Number one, the Seattle new players played such huge roles in this game, even if you consider Josh Gordon just caught 2 passes.
Yeah.
But both of them were for first downs in important parts of the game, very late in the game. Quandre Diggs with a huge defensive play. Jadeveon Clowney with maybe overall the best game of his career, and that's saying something for a former first pick in the draft. And obviously, one of the other things that you think of when you look at this game is the inability of Jimmy Garoppolo to lift his game to any level near what was needed to win this game. At one point, I remember looking up at the TV and I said, I cannot remember Jimmy Garoppolo playing with happy feet like this. Look, this is whatever, like his 18th NFL start, so we don't really know him yet. But that was a bad night for Jimmy Garoppolo and for 49er fans who want to love him, who want to have faith in him. And I'll say finally, I have never seen an assistant coach shown so much on a television broadcast ever than Robert Saleh.
It's every week.
And
it's become the new thing.
Ever.
Yeah.
It was that, that was incredibly excessive, I think. And my whole thought was, after the Seattle Seahawks, on 9 consecutive possessions, hold the 49ers scoreless, I'm saying on my TV, give us Ken Norton. Give us equal time for Ken Norton.
A good point, Peter.
It was absurd.
Good point, Peter. That's very
like
real.
Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
It was like Robert Saleh invented defensive football. And I've had enough. I've just had enough of it. It's ridiculous. And look, their defense played well. That was not a devastating defensive performance like we thought that the 49er defense might actually put up there. But I mean, those are my sort of original 3 thoughts.
Well, okay, I guess I'll go. All right. I mean, so yeah, there's so many things to talk about. First off, you're right about the Robert Saleh thing. He deserves a lot of credit. He's been phenomenal all year long. There's no doubt about that. But yes, it was excessive. And you're right. Just from the prospects of being fair, like you would think they'd show Ken Norton Jr. just a few more times because his defense really was the story of the game with the turnovers, what they did. You're right. The 49ers defense. The 49ers defense, I think, was more dominant than we'll remember in this game just because overtime is going to mess up our brain a little bit. A lot of yards by that Seahawks offense in overtime. And let's not forget, I mean, the Seahawks never really drove the ball all night long either. The defense set them up for some short fields. But to your point, Peter, you're exactly right there. And you hit it. The new players on the Seahawks, and whether it's rookies, DK Metcalf, and what he did. But, Mike, we haven't even talked about that play yet. I mean, that's how many good plays there are in the game. They get the strip sack fumble. They get the ball back. We're going, holy cow, the Seahawks are going to go in at halftime up 14-10. And Jaquiski Tartt strips the ball out of DK Metcalf's hands as he's going into the end zone. I mean, there's just so many plays in general. But to the big point, and back to what Peter said, you're right, Peter. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm not going to look at it and go, ooh, I'm going to hit the panic button. But he certainly didn't answer the question of, oh gosh, if the 49ers can't run the ball and Shanahan can't design all these creative plays, and if they have an injury like no George Kittle or Emmanuel Sanders, I still think the question remains, can Jimmy Garoppolo carry them in those moments against the better defenses in football? I'll say here, the interception was not his fault, but in general, yes, he got away with a few other interceptions that should have been, and it wasn't his best game, that's for sure.
That was the nagging question about the 49ers going into the season. Garoppolo, coming off of the torn ACL, suffered week 3 in 2018 against the Chiefs. Will he be healthy? Will he be effective? And if he doesn't get it done, the way they structure the contracts in San Francisco, it's very easy to escape before April 1. You have trades, free agency. You can do a lot of work in advance of the draft. You know where you're going to be picking. You can make a lot of decisions before you have to make a decision about picking up more fully guaranteed money for your starting quarterback. And once the 49ers start winning games, we forget about this cloud that's hovering over Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, they're not winning these games early in the year because Garoppolo is coming out and playing like Joe Montana and making big throws in big spots to win these games. And at some point, Garoppolo's got to do it, Peter. And we saw some of it Thursday night, week 9 against the Cardinals. But last night was when it fell to Garoppolo to make it happen without George Kittle, make it happen without Emmanuel Sanders. And that offense changed dramatically once Sanders exited with a rib injury. And wouldn't it be something if the 49ers end up having a deep playoff run, a great team on both sides of the ball, and they get to March and they say, we can do better at quarterback, we're done with Jimmy G?
I doubt they're going to do that, Mike, but 3 quick observations on what you just said and following Chris. Number one, the biggest difference, it may have been a game that was decided by the narrowest of margins as the clock ran out, and I get that. There was a huge difference in this game between Russell Wilson and Jimmy Garoppolo.
Sure.
At the most important position in football, the Seattle Seahawks have a huge advantage at quarterback. That's number one. Number two, one of the reasons, honestly, Mike, that this game came down to the end is that the easiest interception of KJ Wright's career, and I have no idea how he didn't catch the ball. It was almost like Jimmy Garoppolo was saying, here, KJ, I'm giving you the gift of a lifetime. And for some reason, he muffed it. So that actually gave the 49ers life.
Yes.
In overtime.
Bobby Wagner,
and the final
dropping it. Yeah, I mean.
Bobby Wagner. But at least.
Dropping offsides.
At least the Bobby Wagner interception was a tough catch.
Yeah, right.
The KJ Wright catch was like you're out in the backyard lobbing the ball to each other.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable that he didn't catch that. I think the last thing I would say just about the whole quarterback situation is that Russell Wilson played a long time in this game without Tyler Lockett. And just think of Russell Wilson and what he has done this season. Jacob Hollister was not even on their team 2 months ago. And last night, he was a gigantic part of this team, or 3 months ago, whatever it was. He was a gigantic part of the game plan by necessity. And it's like Russell Wilson just doesn't care. Russell Wilson doesn't care who is out there. He's going to figure it out. That guy, whoever it was, Atkins in overtime, I never heard of this guy. And here he is catching big passes. Josh Gordon, hey, look, I know there's a lot of great players in the NFL right now, but Russell Wilson is the singular most dominant player, I think, in football. And that says a lot when we've seen Lamar Jackson recently, when we see Deshaun Watson, Christian McCaffrey. Give me Russell Wilson.
Peter, we talked about this last hour. I mean, for all these quarterbacks that are making $30 million or more, Russell Wilson's the only one. Maybe Aaron Rodgers to a lesser extent, but Russell's got no help. And last night, especially in overtime, you said Tyler Lockett. Where's Tyler Lockett? And the guy potentially has compartment syndrome. Who knows how long he'll be out? And it's this revolving door of running backs, receivers, and tight ends. Russell Wilson is the guy that they deliberately made the center of the universe when they began to move on from veteran players after the 2017 season. They paid Russell Wilson huge money. And dollar for dollar, as the quarterbacks making more than $20 million a year go, he's the best value, Chris.
Yeah, yes, he is. I mean, he's to Peter's point. He's been the best player in football to this point in the season, the most dominant, the guy that can make the most with the least. There's nothing you can do to stop him at times, really. And yeah, he fumbled and threw an interception last night. But again, we weren't looking at the Seattle Seahawks like they're the greatest show on turf. We think their offense is really good. Why? Because they're somewhat consistent with the run game, and they do that. But we think they're great on offense because of Russell Wilson. It really stops there. I don't think anyone's going, oh man, Brian Schottenheimer, who did a really good job and does a really good job. But nobody's like knocking down the door like, oh man, we need to get him because he's the new innovative offensive coach in football. No, they are afforded a lot of luxuries because of Russell Wilson's talent. He's the clutchest quarterback in the game. He's the most determined, unflappable quarterback. He's up there with some of the all-time greats as far as Brady, any of those, as far as clutch and just never blinking an eye in big moments. It just doesn't matter. You always feel like he's going to deliver. And, I was texting with Rodney Harrison there in overtime, and we were just like, man, Russell Wilson gets the ball third time in a row. Like, there's just no way they're going to stop him for the third time in a row in overtime. You just knew it once they got the ball back. You were like, he's going to make another play to get them down there to kick another chance to win this game and kick the field goal. And, of course, he delivered because he almost always does deliver. He's just truly a special, special player.
Yeah, absolutely. We got plenty more we can say. Go ahead.
Okay. Just one very quick thing. Malik Turner, Jacob Hollister, Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
Can you please give John Schneider Executive of the Year in November? Can we close out the balloting right now? I mean, this is an organization that understands how to build correctly and build sometimes for the long term. But the Seattle Seahawks right now, last night, showed how you can have a premier team with a lot of bit players playing huge roles.
Right. Yeah. Traded for Clowney, Quandre Diggs. All those things are reflections of John Schneider and what he's done there as a GM, though. You're right.
But ultimately getting Russell Wilson for $35 million a year before it became an awkward situation. Remember, he set the deadline in April. He was serious about it. They got it done, or it really could have gotten very expensive because after a game last night, $40 million a year, $45 million a year may be the right number for Russell Wilson.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.